First of all, thank you all so much for all of the likes, detailed comments, and for subscribing to this channel. I genuinely didn't think the first video was going to get a single view, so I really tried to do an even better job on this one for all of you guys, so let's get into it. I left something out of the renders at the end of the last video, and it took a long time to come up with a solution for this. The entire steering system has to get redesigned. I need to relocate the steering box to the center of the chassis out of the way, and I'm going to have to design a miniature swing set steering rack like a trophy truck with a traction beam up front, and somehow get it to work with a 3-link. That's the plan anyway. Future me here, I did figure it out, but it was fucking hard, which makes me want to put out into the world. I think that professionals like me that post their work need to post more of their mistakes, their mess-ups, their frustrations. It took me so much longer to learn CAD than it should have because every time I would break something, I got discouraged, thinking I was bad at it. Most people only show the polished end result, the good stuff. Design is hard, really, really hard. And even people that do it every day like me constantly break things and they want to rip their hair out. I want to rip my hair out every day. So if you're where I was 7 years ago, do not get discouraged. Stuff not working is part of it. Keep going, keep learning, keep designing. Speaking of stuff not working and breaking, I hope there is at least one person watching this video that knows this exact feeling and this one that comes after it.
No. Wait.
One eternity later. 2,000 years later.
All I had to do now was import the chassis back into Blender and make sure the new steering setup was behind the grille. Now, if you don't know much about CAD, you're probably wondering why I'm switching between two programs and I don't just have the body file in SolidWorks. That's a different video, but here's a quick visualization. The good news is that I triple checked my measurements and I knew this was going to fit behind the grille. The bad news is that the swing arm was now inside of its own mount, which would likely result in undesirable steering characteristics. To keep SolidWorks nice and happy and not explodey, I bounced everything into a new level 1 subassembly for the chassis and got started on the last few revisions. First of which was tweaking the back of the frame, and then temporarily importing the powertrain to make sure I didn't miss anything previously. A couple of hours later, I had a much more realistic and badass front coilover mount. Keeping the center of gravity as low as possible was the perfect excuse to use carbon fiber tube as the compression brace for the coilover mounts. And it also gave me an excuse to try out SolidWorks' new PBR shader. It can't touch programs like Blender, but it looks pretty sweet for CAD. Next up was finalizing my idea for the world's smallest working sway bars. At this size, this is definitely going to be the hardest task because it is absolutely an exercise of packing 1,000 pounds of shit in a 1-pound bag. There was only a couple places I could even fit the sway bar. I got started on the rear sway bar by modeling the inner bearing race that I'm going to make by cutting down a little brass rod. Next, I designed a 3D printed cap to grab the little tiny wire I'm going to use as the torsion spring. And lastly, I wrapped it up with a little piece of cut metal for the sway bar arm. I really quickly threw it into the old finished assembly just to make sure there weren't any contact or clearance issues.
Mission failed. We'll get them next time.
I decided that the sway bar being inside of the coilover would probably result in suboptimal performance, but there was really only one other spot that I could put it, and if that didn't work, I'd have to bail on this idea entirely that I had put all this time into. Luckily, it fit. Barely. Like, really barely. I designed the front sway bar in a pretty similar fashion and got it into a new level 2 assembly along with all of the other powertrain and suspension components. Last on the docket was modeling up my idea for some tiny hydraulic bump stops. I'm going to use some leftover SCX24 coilovers, the extending ones, and throw away pretty much everything. I'm only going to use the housing and the center brass rod, which I'll cut down significantly, and I'll wrap things up with a TPU printed strike pad. After playing around with the mounting position, I finally got things to line up perfectly in the rear. I tweaked the strike pads a bit for the front bump stops, and that was it. The chassis was done. Funny enough, now comes the hard part, making a printable and finished body in Blender. That'll be next week's video, but for now, I'm gonna leave you with these renders of the finished chassis. Thanks for watching, guys.